Welcome back to the channel. Another mock draft. It's pretty much all of my content this year. Joined by Dane Brugler of The Athletic. You did a pretty incredible thing over this past year and have been for a number of years, right?
Yeah, it's talking about the beast, the draft guide. Yeah, that's my labor of love. It's something that I take a lot of pride in. It takes a full year to work on something like that. Very proud of the fact that it's got testing data from almost 1,900 players, over 400 reports. It's over 300 pages. It's meant to be a resource guide. It's meant to, it's okay if our rankings don't match up exactly. That's okay. We can see different things, but hopefully people look at it as a resource guide to have with them during draft weekend, and you can understand everything about the player, from his background to the testing to the strengths and weaknesses to it just all the details. That's I'm a big details guy, and I think you can tell that with the guide. So if you have your athletic subscription, it's included. It's free. Even if you sign up for a year, sign up for a month, you get the draft guide. So I think it's pretty good value.
Yeah, I'll leave a link to that down below. And we have a pretty different exercise here. Although you did do a 7-round mock draft recently posted as well, which again, another thing that I just can't imagine doing. You had 1,800 plus prospects that you have kind of looked at in one way or another, and then you go ahead and put 250 plus into a mock draft. 3 rounds I feel like is difficult enough.
Yeah.
And then
Well, honestly, it's a good exercise for me though, because it really forces you to, okay, the team needs are this for each team, or what are their trends and tendencies. So it really makes you lock into that franchise and understand, okay, you know what, they have certain thresholds for this position, or they don't draft position X in the first round, or and so it really locking in on all of those teams and doing an exercise like that. For me, as it takes a lot of time. It can be challenging to make it realistic, but it's beneficial for me. So it's it's a fun exercise to go through and kind of look at all the different halls that each team has.
And that's exactly what we're doing here today. As you know, and the viewers are finding out, we are going to be alternating picks, each playing the GM role for these different teams. I am the odd-numbered picks here, at least at the start, although I don't think I'm going to get the Giants. Once the Dolphins thing happens, it's going to be a little bit
Right.
weirder, but I'm going to start with Carolina. And basically, if anyone wants to make a trade up, make a move up, they are able to do that if they have their correlating picks. So we're going to jump right in here at number 1. I am taking Bryce Young from Alabama. We talked, quite a bit over the past year about, how awesome Bryce Young is, both liking him a little bit more than CJ Stroud. And it seems like it's kind of looking more and more like Bryce Young every day here to Carolina.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, he's the best player in the draft, in my opinion. So I'm on board with that. You just have to get past the size. And you can think about it, with every quarterback, you're sacrificing something. No quarterback is perfect. And so with Bryce Young, you're sacrificing size, but I'm willing to bet on the instincts, the processing, the accuracy. He's that far above and beyond what you see from the quarterback position, that I'm willing to bet on those things transcending the lack of size with Young. And I think the Panthers, I think they're thinking the same thing as well.
Yeah, it seems, weird or out of character that Frank Reich would go for somebody of his size, but I
Right,
think when
right.
there's a player good enough, you maybe can afford to break, some of those molds a bit. As you hop on the clock at number 2, you DM me earlier, said this was where things could start to get interesting, and this is
This
probably
is
what we're looking at in real life.
That's it exactly. I mean, the reason we love the NFL draft is because it's the ultimate reality show. It's one little pick at the start can create a domino effect. It changes everything. This year, the more and more confident we get about number 1, the less confident I get about number 2 and what the Houston Texans are going to do. I think that you have a first-year head coaching staff, and it's easy from those of us on the outside looking in to say, "Oh, they need a quarterback." This first-year head coaching staff, they are not in a rush. They're not going to push and force the issue at quarterback if they don't need to. And I've been told that there's not a universal belief, everybody's on board within that coaching staff, that there's a quarterback worthy of that number 2 pick. And so if you're Nick Caserio, and we still have a week to go, if you're Nick Caserio, can you find that consensus before the draft and pick that quarterback, or are you going to go a different direction, or maybe you look at a trade? But in this scenario, no one's calling. We're not getting a trade we want, and I think the pick's going to be Will Anderson from Alabama, and so they pass on the quarterback. I think Tyree Wilson's also in play here. You think about the length, you think about the size, the upside. Maybe you could argue it's a better fit for D'Amico Ryans coming from that San Francisco scheme. Bringing that with him, obviously to Houston, that might be a better fit for what he wants to do. I just think Will Anderson is the safest bet, but also, has Pro Bowl potential. As a pass rusher, as a run defender, you know exactly what you're getting. He's wrapped in clear wrapping paper, not a ton of projection. So not only is he a safe pick, I think he also gives you that upside that you expect from a top 3 pick.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be interesting for sure. I think that's kind of where we were wondering for a while. When does the draft actually start?
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, this next spot's going to be very interesting though. And we
Yeah.
talked about this before about a potential to move up here. I'm actually going to not do that. I think everyone's kind of penciled this in as the trade down spot, and it absolutely could be 100%. But if the team doesn't call, if they don't offer enough, it's not going to get moved. And with a team like Arizona, they really can't afford to miss on this one. But I still am going to take a chance on it. We're going to go ahead and go with Tyree Wilson here from Texas Tech. Talked about the length just a moment ago. This is someone that we see go high. I mean, who was on Trayvon Walker before you were? I don't know about anybody. He goes at number
Right.
1. And Tyree Wilson, not quite the same athlete, but you could say maybe cut from a similar cloth in a way, and warrants a top 3 pick in this weird draft year, 2023.
Yeah, I mean, who would have thought that in this draft, when it's all the talks about the quarterbacks, that this is a scenario where 2 non-quarterbacks make up the first 3 picks, but it's realistic. Absolutely. It's realistic. Houston goes non-quarterback. And if the Cardinals aren't able to get that offer to move out of that spot, or maybe the Titans are calling or the Buccaneers are calling, but they don't want to move back 10 spots and, they don't want to move back that far, then, I think that you're looking at a scenario where Tyree Wilson could very well be the pick. And to your point, the reason Tyree Wilson is going to be a high draft pick this year, the same reasons Trevon Walker went number 1 overall last year. It's not many guys that look like Tyree Wilson just walking around the streets. So I think you're spot on with that pick. So that brings me to 4. And this is, the Colts, they were considering maybe giving up 2 3s or, a day 2 pick and then maybe a conditional pick to move up to 3 just to ensure that they get their quarterback. I think they're fine staying at 4. And this will be interesting because, it's 3 quarterbacks here: Anthony Richardson, Will Levis, CJ Stroud. Which quarterback would they go after in this scenario? I'm kind of torn here. I'll be honest with you. I was kind of hoping someone would trade up to 3 and take Stroud just so it would make my decision easier.
Makes it easier, yeah.
But that's not the case, and we have to figure out who are the Colts going to take between. Honestly, I do think if it played out like this, I think it would come down to Stroud and Levis.
The Chris Ballard pick seems like it'd be Will Levis. But who knows? Who knows? Could just
fair,
prefer
right.
the floor of CJ Stroud. No, he's going to be pretty good, very accurate.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, and he's not as toolsy as a Will Levis, but he's 6'3", 215, good enough arm. I think if you had to label one of these top 4 quarterbacks as the safest, then I think CJ Stroud's the guy you're going to do that with. With Bryce Young, as much as we like him, you do worry about durability, staying healthy. And with Anthony Richardson, obviously there's a lot of projection involved. He's a 20-year-old quarterback with a lot of developing left to do. And then with Will Levis, as toolsy as he is, it still feels like there's a bust factor there. With CJ Stroud, I do question the ceiling, but I feel good about the floor. I feel good about where, at the very least, what he's going to give me as a starting quarterback in the NFL. So I'm going to lean with the floor. And even though I'm not completely sold on the ceiling, I'm not sure what the ceiling is, I feel good about the floor. I'm going to go CJ Stroud, pick at number 4 to the Colts. I think they feel good about the quarterback they got now.
Yeah, and that is very interesting. I feel like for a while now, we really thought these 4 quarterbacks could have a really good chance to all be gone now. We kind of have 2 sitting there. And Seattle, I feel like, is a really interesting quarterback spot. Geno Smith, 3-year, $100 million extension or whatever it is. really looks more like a 2-year deal. I wouldn't assume that would stop you from drafting a quarterback if you feel good enough about one available. And it's just tough on the outside looking in. We don't really know if they
Yeah.
are on board with that. Jalen Carter's there. It just kind of feels like that's the guy for Seattle. Yes, you bring in Draymond Jones, very different player from Jalen Carter, obviously, but yeah, you
Mm-hmm.
beef up the interior of that defensive line a little bit. Jaron Reed is another one, but Jalen Carter is just simply too good to pass up on if you feel good enough about him as a person, which who can say if they do or not. That's why this
Right.
is a very interesting exercise.
Yep, no doubt. And I do think that Jalen Carter is going to go somewhere between 5 and 9. I think those 5 picks is Jalen Carter watch to see where he might end up. And Seattle, they've taken chances on character guys in the past. Sometimes it's worked out, sometimes it hasn't. But they're in a position where they have 2 first-round picks, and they might feel like, hey, this is house money. This is we've got a chance to hit it big because of Jalen Carter. If the maturity is, which is never guaranteed, but if he does mature and becomes a key part of our defense, he could be a top 3 to 5 player at his position in the NFL. He has that type of ability, that type of skill. So I would certainly understand if they went that direction. So okay, so we've got another non-quarterback off the board. Detroit. I think a lot of what you said about Seattle being a potential quarterback option, you could say the same thing about Detroit. Jared Goff, I think they're comfortable with as a starter, but how often does Detroit expect to be picking the top 6 picks with a chance at a quarterback? Not very often.
And it's a
Uh,
lot of money freed up if they were to move on from Jared Goff in the next couple of years, too. So this would be a
right.
much cheaper alternative, too.
Right. And the smart play is to always plan for a quarterback instead of waiting till you actually need one. So, as they look at their 2024 roster, because that's what every team does. Every team, every general manager in their office, they've got a whiteboard that they've got a lot of things going on. One of them is they will keep a roster of the 2024 team and what it's looking like. And it's
The
not
little
something they just
magnets
don't.
moving around.
Exactly. Not something they're going to share. They don't want a player coming in and saying, huh, my name's not up there. Why is that? That type of thing. But they're planning for the future and projecting forward. That's what the smart general managers do. And I have no doubt Holmes is doing that in Detroit. But with all that said, I'm going to go with a non-quarterback. I am going to go I'm going to go with corner. And I understand why a lot of people say Witherspoon here because just his play personality matches a lot of what we know Dan Campbell looks for in players. I'm going with the higher upside guy. I'm going Christian Gonzalez, Oregon corner, tall, long, and can run. It's a great place to start with him. Ball skills, instinctive, can play man or zone. I just think you're getting a guy that's one of the younger players in this draft and one of the highest ceilings in this draft. I think he's a real blue chipper. So give me Christian Gonzalez there at number 6 of the Lions.
Yeah, and another argument for Gonzalez over Witherspoon is, are you going to take the guy that maybe profiles better in the nickel? We know the league doesn't really value those guys quite so high. And Witherspoon, who does have the chops to play on the boundary, is a guy that, based on his skill set, would really excel in the nickel. I need water. Jesus. Unreal. I sound like who is it? Dickie V.
Yeah, getting choked up. Getting choked up over the
I
Gonzalez.
care about this, man. I'm emotional. All right. Raiders at 7. I think we got to take a quarterback now. I mean, this is the quarterback fall.
Mm-hmm.
And, God, man, I kind of want to go Will Levis. It feels like a better fit for McDaniels. But I think Anthony Richardson is better. It's kind of a tough call because it's what do I think will happen versus what I want to happen if I was running the team. But obviously, for good reason, I'm not.
No, I think it's you're dealing with 2 players that need a little bit of work, more than a little bit of work. But one, I think if you need someone to play quicker, Will Levis is the guy I think you would go for. If you're willing to be patient and understand Anthony Richardson's timeline, then I think maybe you bet on the potential. You bet on the tools. And with Jimmy Garoppolo in the mix, I think that you could argue potentially, maybe you go Richardson there. But I understand Will Levis maybe thinking that's a better fit for McDaniels and what he wants to do. So it's it's a good call. Which direction you leaning?
It really is tough because you figure with McDaniels and everything you hear, it's his scheme, his scheme, his scheme. It's not about the guys, it's about his scheme. Who does he feel can run the system better? Is it Will Levis, who even though the offensive structure at Kentucky was a disaster this past
Yeah.
year, like it's still pro style concepts. Whereas Anthony Richardson was very RPO heavy at Florida. And I just, even though I am a big Anthony Richardson fan, I would have a hard time thinking that McDaniels would go Anthony Richardson in this spot. So I am going to go Will Levis.
Mm.
Um, and I hate to leave AR on the board still, but this is how the draft goes. It's not always who you want, who you think. Sometimes it doesn't go that way.
Yeah, and honestly, I think Will Levis has gotten a bad rap throughout the process. I mean, this is a guy that um, uh, was still really productive for a Kentucky team that is not known for offense. And you factor in everything going on with that program the last year. He loses his offensive coordinator, loses his top target, Wandale Robinson. He loses 3/5 of his offensive line. The fact that people don't understand how banged up he was throughout the year. I mean, he's getting shots before every game just to be out there. The toughness factor is off the charts with this guy. So the tools, the intelligence, he's scored really high on the testing, the cognitive testing they do. A lot of signs point to Will Levis when you think about the tools and the intangibles. So I won't be surprised. Levis could be the second quarterback off the board. I
I
would
had
not be
actually
surprised.
thought that there was a decent chance when we had talked earlier and you said, get ready. I thought you might have gone Will Levis at two. I thought that was a real
Yeah,
possibility.
it would not shock me in the least if Will Levis is the pick at two. Wouldn't shock me at all if the Colts had their option of any quarterback. If Bryce Young goes one and then it falls like this, where non-quarterback goes 2, 3, wouldn't shock me if Levis goes forward to the Colts over Stroud and Richardson. So yeah, I think that teams like Will Levis a lot more than a lot of people on the outside. Okay, so we're at 8 with the Falcons, and the helmet just changed. We've got our first trade.
Oh,
The Houston Texans at 12, who passed on a quarterback at 2.
oh my.
They're moving up because they're worried about the Titans. The Titans have been eyeing these quarterbacks. They had Anthony Richardson in for a visit. They're looking towards the future. They love the potential of Anthony Richardson. But Houston, not only are they going to foil those plans for their interdivision rival, they're going to get their quarterback of the future. So they're going to trade. Let's see. Let's look at the Texans picks. So they're moving up 1, 2, 3, 4 spots. So this isn't a huge jump. Let's see. Houston, they're going to give up pick 12, obviously, and then also pick 73. They have 2 third-rounders. They're going to give up their second of their 2 third-rounders, which, still a pretty decent pick, top 75 pick, and then a 2 next year. So a second rounder, a third rounder, and I think that would be enough to move up 4 spots in the first round to get their quarterback. So first trade of this mock, we've got the Houston Texans moving up to 8, getting Anthony Richardson, their quarterback of the future. Who knows how much we'll actually see of him year 1, but he's going to be the guy that they're betting on for the long term. And they still got their Will Anderson at 2. They didn't have to reach for someone they didn't feel was worthy of the number 2 pick, but they still are intrigued by the upside of Richardson and what he could offer. So we've got 4 quarterbacks here in the top 8 picks, which I believe I'm pretty sure it's never happened before. So that would be a record.
Yeah, we
Record.
thought in the Fields draft maybe, but he fell to, I think 11 it was. Yeah, very interesting. Couple day 2 picks, and they potentially take a franchise quarterback away from their rival. Very fun. Bears here at 9. Gonna stick and pick. We're gonna go with a tackle. It's gonna be Paris Johnson from Ohio State. Talk about how much Ryan Poles maybe appreciates the length thresholds at the position. Paris Johnson fits them. Peter Skoronski does not. Now they could just go Skoronski because they think he's the best offensive lineman in the draft. Play their best 5. Talked about that possibility before, but gonna go Paris Johnson here at 9 today.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Obviously, you look at the Bears depth chart, and they have a glaring need at right tackle, and Paris Johnson is more of a natural left tackle, but I think that you feel comfortable playing him at the right side, or maybe you consider moving Braxton Jones, who did a nice job last year as a 5th-round rookie, moving him over to the right side, putting Paris Johnson on the left. Either way, you feel good about your upgrading your tackle position. So yeah, I certainly understand that happening. So that gives. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say there was another offensive tackle that went into the NFC North not too long ago who looked like a natural left tackle who has played pretty well on the right side for the Lions for a couple of
Penei
years
Sewell.
now.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
one.
Good call. Good call. So yeah, Philly here at 10. This is, I think ideally the Eagles would love to move down in this scenario. Let's look at this. I think defensive line is obviously a strong possibility here. You got Nolan Smith, you got Lucas Van Ness. They brought in both guys to the facility, so obviously 2 guys they're considering. Me personally, I think I would take Bijan Robinson here. I think we've taken the running back slander too far. You want to talk about not signing these guys to second contracts? I understand. That's a totally different discussion than drafting a running back, even with the 10th overall pick. We're talking about good money, but not franchise altering money here with the 10th pick that you're paying your running back. And I 100% believe Bijan Robinson, the moment he's drafted, will be has a good chance to be a top 10 running back in the NFL. And by year 2 might be top 6. And he has a chance to be one of the better players at his position pretty quickly in his NFL career. So I would have no problem taking Bijan Robinson here at 10. And I think the Eagles would like to trade back a few spots and maybe do that, but I don't believe they take him here at 10. I'm torn here whether to go with the offensive lineman, who I think is the best offensive lineman in the draft, Peter Skoronski.
Plug and play right guard potential.
Yep. Or do I go with the defensive lineman, either Lucas Van Ness or Nolan Smith? I think Howie can't help himself. Howie Roseman, he's gonna take the defensive lineman. And I'm gonna go with Lucas Van Ness. I think he's a guy that the Eagles are always looking towards the future, and Lucas Van Ness is a guy that has so much explosive power and just doesn't even know how to use it yet. So you're betting low with this guy, redshirt sophomore, young player. I'm gonna pencil in Lucas Van Ness here to the Eagles at 10.
Yeah, I appreciate you leaving Skoronski for me because that is definitely something I'm considering. Also considering JSN. I think this could kind of be where that starts for him. They liked Robert Woods, didn't really get what they wanted out of him. But you have JSN here, who kind of profiles to be that slot guy that maybe they were looking for. So it's kind of a toss-up between those two for me right now.
Okay. Are you considering Broderick Jones at all? Or is Skoronski your offensive lineman? That's the guy. That's the main guy.
So probably, I would say in at least 5 out of the last 7 mock drafts I've posted on the channel, really beating that horse dead.
Gotcha.
I've gone Broderick Jones at 11. So I've really, really been on that. I just feel like the power profile fits in really well what they want to do on the ground. However, I do want to mix it up a little bit. And I think I am going to go receiver. I'm going to go JSN.
Interesting. Okay.
Skoronski, I was kind of eyeing again as like the Nate Davis replacement. I talked about right guard earlier. No, he doesn't have a ton of experience there, but the guy that profiles pretty much across the entire line.
The first receiver off the board, I think that's going to be one of the main storylines on draft night is where does that first receiver off the board come off the board? In this mock, it's at 11. And
it's early. I recognize.
Well, but teams are desperate for playmakers, and you could argue Smith and Jigba is the top, not only the top, but one of the more safer playmakers. I feel like what you're getting with Smith and Jigba. So I certainly understand that. And he's ready to plug in from day one. So I've got Atlanta at 12, and I'm feeling great about my trade back because I moved back and I still have a lot of guys on the board that I was considering there at 8. So a lot of different ways I could go. You can't rule out Skoronski here. If you want to plug him in at guard, Devin Witherspoon's still out there. Devin Witherspoon, I know they got AJ Terrell, Casey Hayward. They just traded for Jeff Okudah, so corner is not a glaring need by any means. Could go pass rusher here. Uh, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go pass rusher. I think I'm gonna go Nolan Smith. I think that you talk about wanting juice off the edge. How's a 4.39 40-yard dash sound? I mean, that's what Nolan Smith brings, and he's a guy that plays the run really well. I think that you add him to your rotation as a pass rusher, and he's going to put pressure on the pocket. So I'm going to go Nolan Smith here at number 12, a guy that I might have taken at 8 anyways. So easy trade back for me if I'm the Falcons.
Yeah, Evacadian Smith would be an interesting combination. You talk about athleticism off the edge. That's it. Jets at 13. Probably just not going to pass on Skoronski here. Just need help on the offensive line, potentially at a number of different spots. Made the connection between the Jets liking Elijah Vera Tucker. Think you could definitely like Skoronski for a lot of those same reasons.
Yep.
And not going to hesitate. He is my pick at 13.
And the Jets do like him as a tackle. Some teams have him on the board as a guard. I know that the Jets have him on the board as a tackle. So
Makes it even better.
Well, and you look at the Jets depth chart right now. They've got Mekhi Becton coming back. They've got Dwayne Brown coming back. So maybe he is your starter at guard to start the year. But maybe you try him at center. I think that's the bigger need for the Jets right now. But there's no way that Becton and Dwayne Brown are both making it through a full 17-game schedule. So you're going to need to probably kick him outside the tackle at some point anyway. So the versatility that Skoronski offers, I think that's a big selling point for the Jets at 13. That makes a ton of sense. Okay, so 14 and the Patriots.
I'm very interested to see where you go here. I feel like the board fell pretty well for you, maybe with the exception of JSN being available if you wanted a slot receiver, which we know is prioritizing that offense at times historically.
I mean, this comes down to two players. This comes down to Devin Witherspoon and Broderick Jones, the tackle or the corner. I think you can make a case for either one if you're the Patriots. This is a tough one. Because I think you could argue Jones being the bigger need, but Witherspoon being the better player. So which direction would Bill Belichick and the Patriots go?
Who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, right. Yeah, my guess is as good as yours. I mean, like right now, their starters at tackle, Trent Brown, Riley Reif. They just don't have much in the behind them. At corner, you look at Jonathan Jones, Jack Jones, Miles Bryant. It's hard to get excited about those corners. I mean, this is a tough one. Man, I'm gonna say they go with the better player. I'm gonna say they stick to the board. Bill Belichick loves his corners. Devin Witherspoon, lock him in at 14 to pick to the Patriots.
Yeah, I think that's probably the right call given the circumstance. Isaiah Wynn, maybe you still believe in as well if you're the Patriots. I know they signed a tackle or two, nothing really of note. Packers at 15.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there are a number of different ways this could go. I really think tackle is a possibility here for the Packers at 15, just knowing the way they draft.
Yeah.
Really think that would be a possibility. Considering receiver and tight end, I feel like tight end is one of those positions. Maybe you can provide a little bit of clarity on it. I feel like nobody really knows how many tight ends are going to go in this draft, where the first one's going to go.
That's it. I mean, the over/under, I think, in Vegas is 2.5 in the first round, and that's tough because, there's tight ends that you could see going, and
For
so let's just say Mayer and Kincaid both go. Does a third one sneak in there to the first round? That's a maybe. Right now I would say 2. If I had to put money on it, I would say 2 go in the first round, but Darnell Washington or Luke Musgrave snuck in there, I would not be shocked. And I do think that right here, maybe the earliest we could see one of these guys coming off the board. Maybe Tennessee. They're desperate for playmakers, but definitely here with the Packers, that's in the mix of who they'd be considering. And I'd be interested. Do they prefer Michael Mayer? Do they prefer Dalton Kincaid? One being more of your inline guy can offer more as a blocker, where the other one's basically a slot receiver with his strengths as a player. So where are you going with 15 of the Packers?
Yeah, I even considered Quentin Johnston here as well. Just feel
Hmm.
like he would be an interesting combo with that receiver room. Although, to mix it up, I did that, I believe, in the last mock that came out. So I don't want to make that same pick, even though I think it's a possibility. I really don't want to take a tackle because the comments are going to keep me up at night. Even though I really think that's a possibility. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I am going to start the potential tight end dominoes, and I'm gonna go Michael Mayer here, actually,
Okay.
over
Yeah.
Dalton Kincaid.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. I mean, this Michael Mayer, he might not ever be considered a top 3 to 5 tight end in the league, but he's a guy you just
Safe.
dependable. Yeah, you know exactly what you're getting. He's gonna help the offense from day one. So I can line him up in line. He can be detached. Can help you as a blocker, as a receiver. He's an easy player to like, and so I can understand if the Packers decide that he's their guy at 15. Okay, Washington at 16. They have a need at corner. They did have a need at tackle, but I think they addressed those in free agency. This is where I think the running back slide ends for Bijan Robinson. You think about the Commanders. Sam Howell's their quarterback, and if not Sam Howell, Jacoby Brissett. And nothing against that quarterback depth chart, but they need help. And I think the fact that they're about to sell the team, you need excitement with the Commanders. Bijan Robinson can provide that. He could be that big play threat. Add him to the mix, and all of a sudden, that offense is looking a little more potent. And I always say that the mark of a good draft pick is when the 3 other teams in your division go, oh crap. And I think if Bijan Robinson is the pick to the Commanders, the Cowboys, the Eagles, the Giants are all saying, crap. I kind of wish he would have made a pass there. Kind of wish that didn't happen, because you don't want to face Bijan Robinson twice a year. And so that's the pick. Bijan Robinson is going to DC.
Yeah, as a Giants fan and growing up a Texas Longhorns fan, because all my family in Texas,
That's tough.
it seems cruel that the three teams that you could probably most associate with Bijan in this draft cycle, Philadelphia, Dallas, and Washington.
All likely, or not likely, but all very possible landing spots.
Yeah,
Yep. No
devastating
doubt.
stuff.
Yeah.
Devastating. Steelers at 17. I am going to go corner here.
Okay.
I kind of want to avoid Joey Porter Jr. because I go that way a lot, but
Yeah.
it seems to make way too much sense, and I'm a sucker for a good story. We're gonna go Joey Porter Jr. The Steelers at 17 fills a need, and I mean they got the family thing going on. You look at the Watts, you look at the Haywards, now the Porters even. So that's where I'm going.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I think it would be tough for them to pass on Broderick Jones for sure, because they do need a tackle, but I would not be surprised if they did go the corner route, and a guy that are obviously familiar with 34-inch arms can really disrupt things on the outside for wide receivers. So you understand the strengths that Porter brings to the game and what he can bring to that defense. So no, I get it. Makes sense. So that brings me to Detroit here at 18. They could go, defensive tackle. They could go defensive end. I think it's a good bet they go defense. I mean, they feel pretty good with where they're at on offense. And so if they did go defense, Kalijah Cansey, that's such an interesting one. Giving you the interior disruption that I think they'd love to have. Holmes had it with the Rams with Aaron Donald. Obviously, they're not the same player, but just give you that different element. And I also think with Broderick Jones still there, this is a potential trade spot for a team looking to get that tackle. They could move up to 18 and do it. I think that'd make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I'm hoping he slides to 19.
Yep, Tampa's crossing their fingers, I'm sure. Um, you know what? Let's try to strengthen a strength. And we added Aiden Hutchinson last year. Let's add Miles Murphy. The Clemson, a guy that you want. Every time I watched him, I felt like I wanted a little bit more. I just for a guy with his ability, his talent, just I wanted a little bit more. But you don't see many guys with his length, the wingspan, the 4.5 speed, the athleticism, and the tools. So Miles Murphy, we're gonna add another potential impact pass rusher to the mix, and we're gonna do that with 18 to the Lions.
Yeah, I thought 2021 for him was a little bit better than 2022.
Yeah.
But yeah, you make a strong argument. It's tough to find that build, an athletic profile. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm hoping Broderick Jones was going to slide here, and he has. He's available at 19. Don't have to move Tristan Wirfs over to the left side. Just plug and play Broderick Jones at left tackle, and fills an immediate need. But also, I think this kind of fits with where he could be on the board. He's just a really good player, and one of those guys with a high upside, high ceiling. So Jones just kind of makes sense here at 19 for me.
Yeah, I think it does. No doubt. If you were to make it that far, I think it's easy to bet on a guy like Jones because of the athleticism, the sweet feet for a guy that big. He's still developing in areas. There's no doubt about it. He's played the fewest number of snaps among the offensive linemen in this draft. So still has some development work to do, but you feel good about his future and what it's looking like. So that brings me to Seattle at 20.
It's been a tough spot for me a lot of the year.
Yeah, I mean, just like 5 is a little bit of a coin flip in terms of the direction they go. 20 is same thing. Just kind of resetting the board and what my personal board looks like. Brian Branch, the Alabama safety, is the top player available. Dalton Kincaid, the tight end out of Utah's next. Jameer Gibbs, running back out of Alabama. Brian Brzee, the Clemson defensive tackle. Darnell Wright, Tennessee offensive tackle. Jordan Addison, USC wide receiver. Kalijah Cansey, Pittsburgh defensive tackle. So a lot of different directions they could go here. Sorry, I'm looking at their depth chart here and kind of, knowing what they like to do, and especially with 2 first-round picks, if they're going to take a swing on one of these guys, I don't know. Like, I think Dalton Kincaid would be so interesting there. But I think they do believe in Noah Fant. Like, they think that there's going to be more there this year, and still have Colby Parkinson and Will Dissly in the mix. So I don't think it's going to be Kincaid. You know what? Let's go with Jordan Addison. You feel great about DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett. That number 3 wide receiver spot is a big question mark. Yeah, you're not getting much from that wide receiver 3 on the roster. Jordan Addison can be that guy. Work him out of the slot. He can still take snaps outside. 3-level threat, outstanding route runner, ready to help from day one. And then, in a couple of years when Tyler Lockett's ready to move on, Addison's still there in the fold. So you're, got your built-in replacement. So I think, if Jackson Smith and Jigba was here, maybe that's the pick. But obviously he's gone. So second wide receiver off the board here with Jordan Addison out of USC.
Yeah, and receiver I feel like is a spot here for the Chargers, of course. Really needs speed at that position. Mm-hmm. But with Dalton Kincaid still on the board, getting a vertical threat from that position, someone that can kick out and play in the slot as well. Really like Kincaid, and I think that the Chargers really wanted more out of Gerald Everett this past season, didn't really get as much. I think Kincaid is going to offer everything and more. So he'll be the pick there at 21 for me.
Yeah, makes a ton of sense. I mean, I think somewhere Justin Herbert is fist pumping. Get another dynamic weapon for that offense, a guy that they had real trouble, especially in the red zone, making the tight ends be a weapon for that offense. And you think about, okay, Kellen Moore's the new OC. You think about what Kellen Moore did with Dalton Schultz in
Oh, that's a good
Dallas,
point.
and I think you add a weapon like Dalton Kincaid, he can help open things up. He's going to help add a weapon like that in the middle. He's going to help Mike Williams on the outside, Keenan Allen. So makes sense. I'm on board with that. So Dalton Kincaid at 21. That brings us to 22 in the Baltimore Ravens. We've only had one trade so far, and that's obviously an interesting part of this. Baltimore, they signed Odell Beckham. Does that take him out of wide receiver here? I don't think it does. I really don't. I still think it's a possibility for them.
You're not sold on a 1-year deal? Is that what you're telling me?
A 1-year deal from a guy coming off a major
ACL,
injury,
yeah.
hasn't played in a while. No. So I think Zay Flowers, and I know the Ravens like Zay Flowers quite a bit. So Zay Flowers is in the mix here. If they didn't go wide receiver, they're not. I don't think they go Branch. I don't think they go Gibbs. I don't think they go. They don't. Tackle is not an immediate need for this team. I don't know that Kalijah Cansey really fits this defense. They could go corner. I think that's a possibility if they wanted to go, Deontay Banks. That's a possibility here. Brian Brzee. We know this team likes to add to the defensive line. Brian Brzee could be a nice piece that they add. Brzee to the Ravens is interesting. I think that that's one that he's a local kid. Not that that matters, but obviously someone that they're familiar with. He's can play the 5, can play on the interior, whether it's a 4-eye or over the B gap. Let's go Brian Brzee here. The Ravens strengthening their defensive front with a guy that's versatile and a guy that I don't, he's been banged up. Injuries have been an issue, but if you're getting this guy full health, Brian Brzee, I think it's a steal outside the top 20 picks.
Yeah, I like that a lot, especially when you consider Calais Campbell. And yeah, I mean, Brzee you can see playing a similar role from 3 to 5. Makes my choice a lot tougher than I thought it would be here for the Vikings. I thought Deontay Banks was going to be the pick there at 22. And I'm considering it strongly here at 23, but I'm also considering receiver. And it seemed like there is a focus from KOC with bringing in more talent at that position. You have Justin Jefferson. KJ Osborne is like a nice kind of rotational piece. I don't really trust him as a receiver too. Lose Adam Thielen, who was a nice, security blanket there for a long time. This is an interesting call for me.
Yeah, it is. I think you've got a front office that we don't have a real body of work from them yet. Last year was their first draft as a GM and head coach,
Yeah,
and so right. So this is we're still figuring out what their MO is. And last year they took 2 DBs with their first 2 picks. Could they do it again? Maybe. But I think they're looking at premium positions in wide receiver and DB. Both, I think, qualify under that category.
Yeah, it's a tough call. It really is.
If you go receiver, which one are you considering here?
Well, I think I would probably lean Quentin Johnston, and that's just because Justin Jefferson is so highly utilized in the slot at times. Not that he can't win on the outside, obviously, but it's just they do love to create that mismatch, and Zay Flowers is probably that slot guy. So I think, at least in my head, Quentin Johnston feels like a little bit of a better pick for them. But also, I think they lack so much speed in that secondary, and a guy like Deontay Banks certainly provides a whole lot of it. I don't know if he played quite as fast as he tested to me, but I do like Deontay Banks quite a bit. And I think it's a toss-up. I'll tell you what. I'm gonna go Quentin Johnston.
Okay. Give Kirk Cousins a little bit of help there.
Or whoever quarterback ends up being in the next couple of years.
Right. A guy they can build around along with Justin Jefferson. Okay, so Jaguars at 24. Um, the Jaguars are an interesting spot because they, coming off a playoff run, they can add talent around their young quarterback if they want. Um, or they could go and strengthen the defense, which they certainly need to do at several areas. They could go up front. They could use another pass rusher to the mix. Um, Interesting. Where would they go here? I mean, I thought maybe one of the tight ends, but with the top two guys off the board, I don't think. I mean, Brian Branch is in the mix here. I wouldn't rule him out. Um, let's go Deontay Banks. We're gonna go with the corner who is has size, has speed. I think Jacksonville feels pretty good about Tyson Campbell on one side, and then the other side is a little bit up for debate. Who's the next corner? And so Deontay Banks from day one, he's going to be competing for that starting job opposite Tyson Campbell, and you view him as maybe the long-term starter there. So let's go Deontay Banks, Jaguars 24.
Yeah, I was hoping he was going to make it to 25.
Mm-hmm.
Another tough spot, and everyone's penciled the Giants in for receiver here. I came out not against it per se, but just saying don't force the issue, and I'm not going to here. Zay Flowers, it would be a more long-term answer than what you have right now, but it's another probable slot guy to a team that has quite a few of those guys, and even spent a top pick on Wan'Dale Robinson in the second last year.
Mm-hmm.
So I like Brian Branch quite a bit. I think maybe he's your Julian Love replacement, but also I think he falls under the best player available spot here as well. Emmanuel Forbes is interesting. I don't actually think he's a great fit for what the Giants want to do. So I'm just going to go kind of what I view as BPA at this spot. I think Brian Branch is a top 15 player in the draft. He's available here at 25. We lost Julian Love. I can sell myself on this pick and just be okay with taking who I think is going to be a really, really good pro.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, Branch, he finished like 17 on my board. A guy that 4.58 in the 40, not great. The size, not great, but you trust the tape because this guy, whether he's playing the nickel, playing the safety, playing the post, he makes plays. He can cover. He's an outstanding tackler for a guy that's not huge. And not the longest player, he just doesn't miss tackles. And so, you're adding a guy that, can give you a lot of value in a lot of different ways. So I like it. That brings us to Dallas at 26. I think that if I don't think Bijan makes it this far, in an actual draft, he didn't in this one. But if he did, Dallas, I think they're snatching him up. Same thing with Michael Mayer. I think Michael Mayer or Dalton Kincaid. I think either one of those two guys, they'd be all over at 26, but neither of them made it in this scenario. So you're looking at, if it fell like this, I think the Cowboys draft board at the top would look something like Darnell Wright, the tackle from Tennessee, who they could potentially play at guard. They could go with a more natural guard in Steve Avila or Osiris Torrance, who they've shown a lot of interest in. They've looked at Drew Sanders, the Arkansas linebacker, as a possibility. Jahmyr Gibbs is in play here, and they've also done a lot of work on Darnell Washington as an option here. This is Cowboys are a tough one because I think more than anything they want to get more explosive on offense, and they did that with adding Brandon Cooks. But could they take it another step, and could they do it even more? And they brought in Zay Flowers for a 30 visit, and let's strengthen a strength again. Let's do it with Zay Flowers. Add him to the mix. If you're an offense, you want to keep defensive coordinators up at night. And when you have, you're rolling out CD Lamb and Brandon Cooks and Zay Flowers, and you got to cover everybody. Michael Gallup's in the mix still. You got to cover everybody. Dak Prescott has a lot of toys to play with here. And so let's give him Zay Flowers to the Cowboys.
I definitely like that. They just didn't have enough juice last year with CD Lamb and then like everybody else. Michael Gallup was a disappointment. definitely can get on board with that. Buffalo here at 27. I'm gonna probably address the front seven in some capacity. It's edge, interior, and Jack Campbell, but it feels early for Jack Campbell to me. Although it feels like this is about the range where we usually see that first linebacker go off the board. It's really easy to draw that Jack Campbell, Tremaine Edmonds length, athletic profile comparison, even if I don't really view them as similar players. Other than that, I don't know. I think there's so much talent on the edge in this draft. I think I'm going to go with Will McDonald here. Misutilized at Iowa State, played a lot of the 4-eye, which is it's tough to generate a ton of production from that position. I know Kayvon Thibodeau was in that a lot at Oregon as well, but he did a little bit better in that regard. But Will McDonald has a ton of juice. Von Miller, I don't think is somebody you can count on. Huge injury, into his mid-30s now. I think if you're going to find someone that you like to potentially replace him and even work into the mix here, looks like Boogie Basham's probably going into his last year in Buffalo. We're going to go Will McDonald.
There is no such thing as having too many pass rushers. You keep these guys fresh, you rotate them in and out. Will McDonald is a freaky athlete. And so, you put offenses in conflict when you have a guy like that you can rush from different angles. And so I like it. Let's do, Cincinnati at 28. I think they're another team that could be looking at defensive tackle. They want to get better on the defensive line. They have a need at corner as a very strong possibility, but they also have a need at right tackle. And if I'm the Bengals, I'm feeling great that Darnell Wright is falling into my lap. We went out and got Orlando Brown in free agency. Jonah Williams wants a trade. Lyle Collins, with the injuries. I am going to draft Darnell Wright if I'm the Bengals, and I'm feeling great about that. Turning my offensive line, which is 2 years ago, a big question mark, turning it into a strength with what I've done this offseason.
Yeah, I'm very interested to see what happens there in Cincinnati. I think, Orlando Brown has some limitations that probably suit him better as a right tackle, but they paid him and they want him at left tackle, so maybe it works out. Jackson Carman did a decent job, though. I don't know. I was kind of surprised they didn't stick it out with him, and we'll see, because he didn't really look that great before jumping out to left tackle. I don't know. I thought you were going to go Kalijah Cansey there, and I'm heavily considering it here.
Oh, yeah. I think that when you look at the last 5 teams here, Buffalo, Cincinnati, the Saints, Philly, the Chiefs, they all need defensive tackle help. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see a run on these guys, whether it's Cansey or Mazi Smith, or I wouldn't be shocked at all. We see a run on these defensive tackles in this range.
I thought you were going to go Mazi Smith at 26. I thought that was a real possibility to Dallas. I am going to go Kalijah Cansey here. Need more juice on the interior.
Yep.
Cansey certainly satisfies that criteria, if nothing else.
Yep, that makes sense. Certainly understand if they go that route. Cansey could go anywhere from the mid-first round to late first round. There's a lot of differing opinions on Cansey and where he fits. For the Eagles at 30, I'm going to go with Adibare here, Northwestern defensive tackle. I tell you what, it wouldn't be surprising if we see the Eagles go with an all Northwestern first round. Peter Skoronski at 9 or at 10, and then Adibare here at 30. You get better on both the offensive line, defensive line. On defense, you're adding a guy that not a little bit undersized, 280 pounds, but 34-inch arms, explosive dude. What he did one-on-ones during the Senior Bowl is outstanding, that he blew up the combine. This is the type of guy that the Eagles are perfectly fine betting on. So let's go with Adibare at Northwestern here at 30.
Yeah, I think Adibare running in the 4.4s might be the freakiest testing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
As at 282 pounds, pretty unbelievable.
That's pretty rare.
And man, do I like how things have worked out if I'm Kansas City here. Got Anton Harrison on the board, athletic left tackle. You have some of the top edge rushers still there, B.J. Ojulari, Felix Onyedike Uzama. I like the way this has played out. I'm not going to overcomplicate things, though. You lose Orlando Brown Jr. Yes, you pay a lot of money to Juwan Taylor to play right tackle. Anton Harrison is your left tackle of the future here. He's fallen into your lap. You go from one Oklahoma tackle to another. And we're going to go Anton Harrison to wrap things up here for the, we'll call it the first annual Bengal and Dane Brugler mock draft here. We'll see what happens in 2024. This was a lot of fun, though.
Yeah, no, it was. And it's fun to talk through these scenarios because that's what I feel like mock drafts get a bad rap sometimes by people, but you know what? You know what NFL teams are doing right now? They're doing mock drafts, because they're doing scenarios. I almost want to like petition to change the term mock draft to draft scenario, or because that's what these are. They're scenarios that are realistic that could play out, and one little change at one pick could have a domino effect on what happens the next 20 picks. And so, yeah, I think that it's interesting to go through these scenarios. And like I said, NFL teams are doing this right now, so they're not caught off guard on draft weekend. They have a good feel. Okay, if this, and this happens, we'll do this. If, all of a sudden this changes this, we feel good about this. So, this is one of those things. I don't think we had any glaring omissions here. I think Emmanuel Forbes, a corner from Mississippi State, has a good chance to go in the first. We didn't have any linebackers, right? No Drew Sanders, no Campbell, no Simpson, only 2 tight ends, no Jalen Hyatt. So none of the guards, Osiris or besides Skronsky, if you want to consider him a guard, but no Osiris Torrance, no Steve Avila, no Mozzie Smith. I think there's a good chance Mozzie ends up going in the first round. He didn't in this scenario. So yeah, it's a really interesting exercise to go through something like this.
Other than basically no trades happening, which we know is not going to be the way it works out. It's just it's way cleaner.
Yeah,
but yeah, basically there were because Tyree Wilson stayed put at 3. What is the biggest? I don't think that's going to happen type thing that happened in this particular mock draft. Was it a player falling out? Was it a player going too early? Was it a player to team fit you didn't particularly like?
I guess I would be surprised if we didn't see a trade for one of the quarterbacks at 2 or 3. It's possible it ends up like the way that we played it out with Will Anderson 2 and Tyree Wilson 3. But I feel like the quarterback desperation is that real that something happens, whether it's the Raiders moving up or the Titans or who knows, maybe Atlanta surprises us and makes a move if the right package is there, where they're not of what they have to give up to move up to get a quarterback. So I think at the end of the day, we'll see some type of trade at either 2 or 3. I think there's a good chance of that happening.
Yeah,
What about you?
I wonder, thinking back on the potential trades here, if we have the same scenario, and yeah, we expect the trades to happen. Didn't happen in this one really, but I wonder if the quarterbacks fall a little bit. If Detroit is potential trade down, given maybe you have a similar grade on the corners, and a team like the Raiders might be looking to jump up a spot. Maybe the Titans want to move up. Maybe it's the Texans, like what happened in here. I feel like the Lions could be a potential team that moves down if they decide they don't want a quarterback, which they still could. So this is interesting.
Yeah, no, and I think most teams this year have anywhere between 12 and 16 first-round grades. So it's a draft where if you're picking in the top half of round 1, you'd love to trade back without getting out of the top half. So yeah, if you're the Lions at 6, you'd love to trade back, but you want to still be within the top 16. Because I think there's a drop off then to that next tier. But the chance to add day 2 picks, that's going to be gold, because this is I think a really good. I think it thins out on day 3. I don't love day 3 this year, but I do think that day 2 is those picks are gold. Like a lot of years that's a true statement. You can find those NFL starters in the 2nd and 3rd round really round out your roster. So no different this year. I think it's a strength of this draft.
You're about like 15 corners that you feel pretty good about if you walk away.
Right.
But that is going to do it, guys. Thank you so much for watching. This was a ton of fun. Let me get some feedback down in the comment section below. Check out the Beast over on The Athletic. And Dane, thank you for joining us. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah.
And
Enjoy
later,
it,
guys.
man.